Welcome back to my Sleepytime Reading channel. We are on to part 3 of Etiquette today. We are still slowly working our way through a dinner party and all of the manners expected in that. So on to part 3 of chapter 1 of Etiquette. In reality, it is not more expensive to have a good dinner than a bad one. Rather the contrary. For if it is bad, you lose your friends, who do not feel inclined to repeat the experiment of dining with you, and the various plats from being badly cooked and served up are quite wasted. Whereas, if your dinner is perfect of its kind, though it may be of the simplest description, it gives pleasure to everyone, and there is no fear of your dinner parties lacking guests. The best of everything is the truest economy in the end. When dinner is over, the servants rapidly remove all the plates, knives, and forks, and glasses. If the dinner has not been served à la Russe, the different dishes of dessert are then placed upon the table. As a rule, the tablecloth is not removed, and where the dinner has been à la Russe, it would of course be impossible. But in old-fashioned houses, particularly in the country, the tablecloth is sometimes taken off. This is where the host is justly proud of the age and polish of his dinner table. Generations perhaps having contributed, by what is known as elbow grease, to its present highly polished surface. A dessert plate would be placed before each guest, the doily underneath, then the dessert plate, then the ice plate, or, where ice is not served, a finger glass. When ice is served, the finger glass is placed by the side of the plate, on the right side, with 2 glasses, one for claret and the other for sherry. The ice plate remains on the dessert plate until the guest has eaten the ice, then the servant takes it away. It is usual to leave the doily under the dessert plate. Sometimes ice is handed round on the ice plate. 2 ices are always provided, say ginger cream and raspberry water, and wafers are always handed with them. The ices most in fashion are those named also vanilla cream, strawberry cream, lemon, water, brown bread cream. The servant would say ginger cream or raspberry water to each guest, who would reply at once which they desired to have. When silver or china bowls are possessed by the host, the ice should be put in them and so handed round. Each guest has a gold or silver ice spoon, with a gold or silver dessert knife and fork, or the same with china or crystal handles, placed on the dessert plate. Pears and apples are peeled, cut in halves and quarters with the fruit knife and fork. Oranges are sometimes peeled and then cut into slices, or else they are divided into 4 pieces, each of which is cut from the rind by the knife and fork. Sometimes they are prepared by the housekeeper, in which case they are carefully peeled, piled into a dessert dish, and covered with white powdered sugar. A second spoon is placed for the guests when melons, peaches, apricots, nectarines are part of the dessert. Otherwise, all the juices would be lost. The same in eating strawberries and cream. If the strawberries have been divided from the stalks and mixed with the cream and sugar, a spoon would be necessary in eating them, and they are often sent up like this, especially at large parties. When the cream is iced, if the strawberries have not been previously picked, then a spoon is still more necessary, as by its aid the fruit is separated from the stalk and leaves, and mashed cream and sugar being added by each guest, for which purpose a jug of cream and basin of powdered sugar would be handed round by the servant on a silver salver. Both knife, fork, and spoon are necessary in eating pines, the 2 former to cut the slices from the rind, the latter for the juice. White sugar is eaten with pines, indeed with all kinds of fruit, whether stone or otherwise, as it brings out the flavor so much. Grapes are a difficult fruit to eat. The best way is to half close your hand, place your hand to your lips, allow the stones and skins to fall into your fingers, then quietly place them on the side of the plate, the back of your hand acting as a screen, so that your act is not visible to the other guests. Vulgar people allow the stones and skins to fall from their lips to the plate, but such a breach of decorum is never indulged in, except by those who know no better. Currants, strawberries, gooseberries, raspberries are held to the lips by the stalks, which are then placed on the side of the plate. Cherries, plums, damsons are eaten in the same way as grapes. Chestnuts are served up very hot, placed between the folds of a serviette or on a plate. The skins are cracked with the fingers, and the chestnuts eaten with salt. Filberts are cracked with a nutcracker, and also eaten with salt, likewise walnuts, and after nuts a little sherry is generally taken. In many houses walnuts are sent to dessert ready peeled, which is an excellent plan, as the juice stains the fingers of the guests when they are peeling them, and then the fingers have to be dipped in salt, then into the finger glass, and then wiped on the doily. Walnuts should be cracked, taken from the shells and placed in boiling water. The skin then comes off quite easily. The pieces should be placed to dry on clean sheets of white blotting paper, which absorbs the moisture, and then sent up on gold, silver, china, or glass dishes, according to the position of the host or the extent of his purse. Some people drop the pieces into a glass of sherry, let them soak for a few minutes until the sherry penetrates them, then take the pieces out one by one, dip them into salt, and eat them with a fork. Deviled biscuits are often handed round at dessert, or, if preferred, with the cheese. They should be thin water biscuits, well buttered, and powdered with black or cayenne pepper. Guests do not help themselves to the different dishes. They are placed upon the table to make it look pretty, and the fact of the dessert being on the table does not make it correct for them to take what they require or wish to eat. The servants take off the dishes in turn, and as dinner has been served to the guests, in like order the dessert is presented to them, and when all have been handed, the dishes, if not empty, are replaced in the proper places upon the table. Silver gilt dishes containing rose water, orange flower water, or Mitcham lavender water is usually handed to each guest just after the table is cleared, before the dessert is handed round. Guests should dip their serviette into it and gently touch their lips and fingers. If there's no silver gilt dish, the finger glasses would be filled with the orange, rose, or lavender water and used in the same way. Liqueurs are always given at dinners nowadays. They should be handed by the butler on a silver salver to each guest, or, where the party is a large one, the footman carries the liqueurs and glasses on a tray, and the butler, going to each guest, inquires which liqueur they will take, and, taking the glass and bottle from the footman, who follows him to each guest, he fills the glass and hands it to the guest on a small silver salver. Liqueur glasses are all shapes. They are either silver or glass, plain glass, iridescent, Bohemian, or Venetian. Silver liqueur mugs are often made with a handle. Others are quite plain, while the glass ones are sometimes square at the top, but the prettiest are those shaped like tiny tumblers or like mugs. The usual time for liqueurs is immediately after the ices have gone round. The butler, when the dessert has been handed round, should fill the guests' glasses with claret or sherry. Port and Madeira are generally placed on the table, and champagne also, as many gentlemen prefer it to wine, and if they have drunk it during dinner, continue it instead of mixing it with anything else. If you have some good 1820 port, you may be quite sure that the gentlemen, at any rate, of your party will not say no to it. Port wine is usually handed round after cheese, and in most country houses, where home-brewed ale abounds, small glasses of it are generally offered to the guests, in case they prefer it after their cheese to port or sherry. Sherry is always handed round after soup, and is not generally drunk more than once until cheese or dessert, as but very few people drink it all through dinner. If oysters are given to commence dinner, Chablis, Sauterne, Hock, or Guinness's stout are drank after them. Plates of thin brown and white bread and butter are handed round with them, and a small castor of cayenne pepper, and one of black, and slices of lemon and vinegar. 6, 8, or 12 oysters to each person. Hock is either drunk after fish or during dinner. The butler hands round the champagne directly the first entree is served, and continues to do so at intervals until dinner is ended. 3 or 4 times at least for the gentlemen, as glum looks are the result of a too stingy administration of this popular beverage. Champagne should be of the best, or never give it at all. It should be still or sparkling, and both kinds should be offered, sweet and dry, as some like one, some the other. A good plan is to mix the two. That generally suits most tastes. Champagne should be well iced before it is brought into the dining room. Some like it quite frappé. If this is not done, ice may be added to each glass, and should always be handed as soon as the glass is filled. Ice is not used with claret, which should be kept in a genial temperature before it is decanted. Ice is taken with hock, or spirits of any kind mixed with soda, seltzer, and other mineral waters. Broken ice, such as is put into glasses, is usually handed in a glass ice pail, with a pair of ice tongs to take out the pieces. Claret should always be decanted, the lighter kinds that are drunk during dinner, also the superior sorts. Also Burgundy should be decanted before dinner. Shaking it should always be carefully avoided. Claret should be drunk out of claret glasses, sherry out of sherry glasses, champagne in champagne glasses or small tumblers, or glasses the shape of claret glasses only rather larger. Light wines in hock glasses. These are prettiest with coats of arms painted on them. Liqueurs in liqueur glasses. Spirits of all kinds with soda, seltzer, or apollinaris in soda water glasses. It would be quite wrong to drink champagne in a sherry glass or sherry in a hock glass. There are proper glasses for all kinds of wine, whose use should be strictly adhered to. Decanters are all shapes and sizes. No rule can be laid down for them, except that equally with glasses there are different kinds of decanters for each kind of wine. After the wine has been handed round to all the guests, the butler should then place the claret, sherry, champagne, and port in front of the host, and then he should leave the room. The wine would be passed round by the host, he offering it first to the gentleman nearest him on the right. He should never begin on the left. The decanters are merely passed round. The guests may fill their glasses or not, just as they please. The host does not ask his guests to take wine. That is left to themselves to take or refuse it. The old-fashioned custom of drinking wine with each other at dinner or dessert has now almost entirely gone out of use. Many a good man and true has been worse for frequent repetition of "a glass of wine with you, sir," so much the fashion with previous generations. The wine is passed round for the benefit of the gentlemen chiefly, as generally ladies do not take wine every time it is offered to them by the butler, and one glass of wine is considered enough for them at dessert. Should, however, a lady wish for another glass at dessert, she would not help herself. The gentleman sitting next to her would pour the wine out for her. It would be the worst possible manners, and show the person so acting to possess neither the tone of good society nor the position of a lady, for any lady at dessert to take a paper cap, for example, out of a cracker, and sit with it on her head, or throw bonbons at her host or any of the guests, nor should she make remarks to her vis-à-vis in a loud whisper. As a rule, ladies do not remain in the dining-room above a quarter of an hour after the servants have left the room. The decanters have been passed round once in that time. The signal for the ladies to leave the dining-room is given by the hostess, who bows to the lady of the highest rank present, who is seated at the host's right hand. The lady of highest rank should then rise from her seat, as should all the other ladies on seeing her do so, and, in the order of precedence in which they had entered, the ladies would leave the room, the lady of highest rank first, the hostess last. As each lady finished her dessert, she would put on her gloves and gather up her fan and handkerchief, so as to be ready for her hostess's signal. They would not carelessly throw their serviette onto the table, but carefully onto the chairs, not on any account fold them, as such a proceeding would be quite wrong. The gentlemen would rise when the ladies do, and, pushing back their chairs, would make room for the ladies to pass, standing by their chairs until the hostess had left the room, when they would resume their seats. As a rule, the gentleman nearest the door holds it for the ladies to pass out, and holds it open until the hostess has left the room, when he closes it behind them. But sometimes the gentleman who is the quickest in moving performs this act of civility. On no account would a lady, if there were only one present, be allowed by the gentleman to open the door for herself. It would be a great breach of etiquette to permit such a thing. Then, the ladies having departed, the gentlemen would close up round the table as near their host as possible, and conversation should be general. Claret of the best qualities would now be drunk, and if cigarettes are smoked, they would not be until the guests had drunk all the wine they required, as smoking would spoil the flavor of the claret. No connoisseur would insult good wine by committing such an act of barbarism. Coffee would then be brought in, and a glass of some liqueur is usually drunk with it. 20 minutes nowadays is generally the longest time gentlemen sit over their wine and cigarettes, half an hour at the longest, instead of an hour or more as they used to do formerly. This change of time is much appreciated by hostesses, as it saves them from a weary time of waiting, trying to find amusement for their guests, who usually show no signs of animation, and seem to forget that the gift of speech is theirs until the gentlemen make their appearance, and then, armed for conquest, their gay talk and general animation are in the ascendant. On the Continent the ladies are conducted to the drawing-room by the gentlemen, who do not remain in the dining-room after dessert is over, as we do in England. The gentleman of highest rank leaves the dining-room first. If the wine is bad and the company unsuited to him, he might propose an adjournment to his host after 10 minutes had elapsed. If the guests were discussing some subject in which he did not want to take part, or he was otherwise bored, he could propose an adjournment, but it would be a breach of etiquette on his part to leave the room until the others were ready to follow. At a well-chosen dinner party, harmony of tastes and mutual liking among your guests should reign supreme, and where this is the case, all the guests would adjourn at the same time, the host following last. The host should not propose adjourning to the drawing-room before, say, 20 minutes, unless his guests seemed bored, consulted their watches, yawned, or allowed the conversation to flag, in which case he should leave the room at once. The host should ring the bell on leaving the dining-room, which would signify that tea should be brought into the drawing-room, which is not done until the gentlemen leave the dining-room. When the ladies leave the dining-room, they go direct to the drawing-room, where coffee is at once brought to them. The usual way is for the footman to carry a silver tray or salver, on which are placed small china coffee cups. Those of the shape called trembleuse are very much the best, as the saucer is so deep in the center that the cup fits so far into the socket that no shaking is possible. A small silver, china, or silver gilt spoon is placed on each saucer. On the tray or salver are placed silver or china jug of cream, the same of hot milk, and a silver or china basin of candied sugar. Coffee may be poured into the cups before the tray is brought in, which the footman hands to each guest, and they will add sugar and cream according to their tastes. Sometimes the butler carries on a salver a silver coffee pot, and pours out the coffee as each guest takes it. Sometimes, particularly in large country houses, each guest pours out their own coffee, the servant holding the tray for them with the cups. The guests after dinner disperse themselves into groups or tete-a-tete couples, and so commune pleasantly. A clever hostess will generally so arrange that some one or more among her guests should play or sing, so that there may be a break in what would otherwise prove perhaps a monotonous evening. There should be light and shade in everything, and a little singing or music at a dinner party is like a touch of sunlight across the shadow of a picture by Rembrandt, which brings into full view the beauty of the picture. So is music much to be desired at these entertainments. It may not always be so pleasant for the person who plays or sings, but they must take consolation in the thought that they are rendering a great service to their guests, and fulfilling their duty to their neighbor. Sometimes cards are played after dinner, whist, écarté, etc., but this is seldom done at large dinners in London, as people are in a hurry to rush off to some concert or ball. When they are played in London, the hostess should tell her guests beforehand of her intention. At ceremonious dinners, the time before leaving, say from half an hour to an hour, is generally employed in conversation, without music or cards. Now, with regard to conversation at dinner parties. At dinner, if a lady and gentleman go into dinner together, it is quite optional whether they converse with their neighbors or with each other only. It would be in the best taste to talk to your neighbors. If you knew them before, of course you would do so. If you were not previously acquainted, there are plenty of topics for conversation common to everyone, on which you could address some remarks to them, and so make their evening pass pleasantly. A series of tete-a-tetes all round a dinner table are no doubt charming to those chiefly concerned, but hardly agreeable to the rest of the guests, who have no one to talk to in a similar way. At dinner, do not dash into the conversation with "Oh, I say," when someone far better informed than yourself has got the speaker's eye, but wait until time and opportunity serve for you also. Then say what it is you have to say. People do not like forwardness at dinners more than anywhere else, although at the same time a reasonable amount of conversation is expected from you, and do your best to make it interesting, even if it is not actually brilliant. That is a talent given to comparatively few people, but strive to soar above the ordinary commonplace level, or you will speedily find that you may count your invitations to dinner as being like angels' visits, few and far between. Especially where ladies are concerned, treat them with chivalrous politeness and most courteous manners, not as if they were beneath your notice, as so many men of the present day do. It is not etiquette always to talk of yourself and your belongings. I did this, my father thinks that, my mother is lovely, my sisters dance so well, and so on through the whole scale of your sisters, cousins, and aunts. Believe that any other subject is more interesting than yourself, and you will probably be right in doing so. The chances are that no one will disagree with you. Do not rashly speak disparagingly of any absent persons, or you will run the risk of taking away the character of your neighbor's nearest and dearest. In a word, be discreet if you can. Do not be a gossip. It is an evil trade, and breaks more reputations than ever it mends. If people would only bear in mind these simple rules, society in general, and dinner parties in particular, would be far more agreeable than they usually are. Guests leave in whatever order they please. No hard and fast rule can be set down as far as their leave-taking is concerned, as so much depends on their plans for the rest of the evening. In the season, most of them would proceed to one or more concert, party, or ball, so that they would take their leave of their hostess at different hours. 10:45 is the average hour for leaving. Those of the guests who have carriages would tell the footman what time they required them, and on their arrival, the butler would announce them to each guest in the order of their arrival. Those who have no carriages would ask the hostess if a cab might be ordered for them. The hostess's permission to ring the bell would be asked by any lady who desired to know whether her carriage had arrived, and, when given, one of the gentlemen present would at once ring the bell, and make the necessary inquiry. Each guest, as they leave, would shake hands with the hostess, who would rise from her chair for that purpose. To omit this act of courtesy on the part of a guest would be to exhibit a total want of good manners, just as much as etiquette forbids all those present to walk round to the room making ceremonious adieu to all assembled, whether acquainted with them or not. Friends, if standing or sitting near each other, would shake hands. Acquaintances, in passing each other, would say good night, and those whose only acquaintance was very slight, perhaps only dating from that evening, would only bow civilly to each other. A gentleman who had only been introduced to a lady at a dinner party would make her a bow when she left, but would not offer to shake hands with her unless she held out her hand first. The host would conduct the lady of highest rank downstairs, and would wait in the hall while she put on her cloak in the cloakroom. Then he would give her his arm and conduct her to her carriage, making a bow and shaking hands as he wished her good night. Then the host would escort the lady next in rank to her carriage, or if there is a near relation or a son of the house present, he would conduct some of the ladies to the carriages, while the host was doing the same. No gratuities are ever offered by gentlemen to the butler, or by ladies to the lady's maid in attendance. Etiquette forbids such a thing. It would be in the worst possible taste to attempt it. Etiquette requires that those who have been invited to a dinner party should call at the house where they have dined before a week has elapsed. Neighbors and new acquaintances should in the country be asked to dinner, unless anything specially prevents it, within a month from the day when the first call has been paid. Within the ensuing month the return dinner should be given. The first evening of a large party in a country house, the guests are usually sent in with due regard to rank and precedence. On subsequent evenings, so much formality is not observed. In some houses the ladies choose one evening, the gentlemen the next, who shall escort them to dinner. In other houses they draw lots. Either are good plans, as they obviate the necessity of having the same companion for a week, maybe longer, which arrangement is sometimes very pleasant, sometimes very much the reverse. Extra arrivals each evening would make precedence necessary again, as lots and choosing your partners, if I may so express it, for dinner would be too unceremonious a way of arranging matters to meet the requirements as to rank, etc., of a very large country house party. And as at each of these reunions there are sure to be some who think a great deal of the respect due to them, it is as well, indeed, it is simply a matter of etiquette to conform to them. In most country houses, also at London dinner parties, the butler usually brings in a tray with brandy and whiskey, seltzer, soda water, and ice, in case any of the guests wish to partake of anything before leaving. Finger glasses filled with water, peppermint water, or water with a slice of lemon in it, should always be handed round after prawns, shrimp, or crawfish, so that the guests may dip their fingers in, then wipe them on the serviette to get rid of the fishy smell. Brown and white bread and butter should always be served with all these fish. Also, when plover's eggs are in season, with them as well. Awnings should always be provided at large dinner parties, and also on all occasions even when an awning is not considered necessary. Carriage rollers should be provided. They are put down by the footman prior to the dinner party, so that the guests should step upon them on getting out of their carriages, which prevents their feet from getting damp, and their dresses dirty. Red cloth is only laid down when royal guests are expected. An awning then is also imperatively necessary. And we have at last reached the end of the dinner party. That is the end of the first chapter of this book, Etiquette. And next time we'll be moving on to chapter 2 to find out what we do at breakfast, déjeuner à la fourchette, and 5 o'clock tea. Thanks again for checking out my Sleepytime Reading channel. Please come back for soft-spoken readings on other topics. And please like, subscribe, and leave any comments below. Thank you very much.